Oh, wow. Hey guys, in desperate need of a haircut here, also known as Birthday Dinosaur. And here's a review of Incredibles 2. Now, I know this movie's been out for like a month or two, a month and a half, but I haven't seen a lot of discussion about it, and if I'm being honest, I put a lot of effort into writing this, so I just want to get my 2 cents out there, not totally waste my thoughts on this. So, it starts off pretty weird. And when I say that, I mean the opening scene is very strange. I'm not going to spoil anything yet, but they start this movie with the same thing they ended their short film with. And honestly, it only really makes sense is if you stitched both The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2 into one giant movie. But even then, it's kind of clunky. I really didn't like the design of this movie too much. And I'm not talking about the animation. The animation is really great. It's a very welcome improvement over the first movie. The first movie is great for 2005? But when you look back on it, some of it looks like test animation that you would find on the special features of a movie today. But in that first movie, they seemed to really embrace the time period they were in. And it really did feel like these superheroes were being put into a classic superhero setting. And while in this movie there are more references to it being set in the 60s, but what we see on screen tells us otherwise. Specifically, the locations and the new characters. In the first movie, the two locations are very, very fit for the time period. The city they're in is very kind of flat, boring. It's what you expect to be in the background of like a 60s Spider-Man cartoon, which for what they're trying to do really works. And when they go to Nomanis Island, I think. No Man is an island. It seems like the type of location that you would see in an action movie in the 60s, like a James Bond film or something. It's very jungly, there's all sorts of sleek tech, there's like a volcano cafe or whatever they have there. But in this movie, when you see the city, it looks like San Francisco. It was nice seeing both Dash and Violet be a lot more mature than they were in the first movie, and I'll talk about them later in spoilers, I'll talk about their arcs and everything. Elastigirl has a bigger focus in this movie, which I thought was fine. I wouldn't say I was wowed by her character really. It's fine. But she never bothered me in this movie. And you know what? She's fun to watch. They do cool things with her powers, and she is an endearing character. She's good. People have said that in this movie Bob is an asshole, but I disagree. I think he's in a very conflicted state, and the movie tends to show only one side of that state, so it's still a fault of the film. Other characters I really liked seeing was Jack, Edna, Frozone, especially Frozone. The new characters are kind of the great Bob Odenkirk, as always, did a really good job acting, but the issue is that his character feels less like a character and more like a plot character, meaning he feels like his only real purpose in the film is to start the central conflict and then give out some exposition. I'll talk about the villain, Screenslaver, more in spoilers, but yeah, I didn't really like him too much. Also, his name makes no sense. It's clearly a play on the term screensaver, but this takes place in the 60s where no one had that term or like any computers to really have, where they had like that one fish game on their computer. Feeding Frenzy. It was Feeding Frenzy. So it's either Screenslaver is a totally unique name, or he invented the term screensaver before anyone else did, and then he called himself Screenslaver. What's going to happen in the Incredibles universe when they actually do have these computers invented and they actually do have screensavers? Are they going to call them something else because the name is too closely related to Screenslaver? And the new supers were mixed, to say the best. They seemed like characters that you'd find in a video game that got the plug pulled on them in Wreck-It Ralph. By the end of the movie, I really came to like the character Void, which is surprising considering how little screen time she has. But although to a lesser extent, she shares the same issue with the rest of the heroes. Their designs. They're awful. Awful designs. Compare them to the designs of the superheroes we see in the first movie and they just don't fit really in this universe. It'd be one thing if their costumes were different than those heroes, because they had their costumes made in the 40s and they had like Edna make them and everything. While in this movie, these heroes are in the 60s and they have, what's his name, make them. But they don't look like they have superheroes designs in the 60s either. They just look like bad DeviantArt characters. And the only two heroes that have those designs that could fit in the time period are bland, uninspiring blue costumes. One of them is just a ripoff of Quicksilver's costume. Also, when I was looking for photos for this video, I found this one edit where it's the children of the Incredibles grown up. As you can see, they just photoshopped Violet's head onto Miss Incredible's body. And with Jack Jack, they photoshopped Dash's hair to look more like Jack Jack's hair. And then with Dash, they just put him on Mr. Incredible's body, but they gave him a beard by turning his hair upside down and putting it on his chin. Anyway, here's the Obamas as the Incredibles. I feel like this movie understands in a very basic sense as to what made the original movie good, which is the connection between the Incredibles' private lives and their lives as superheroes. The first third of that original movie is really great. It doesn't seem like a kid's movie because everyone's depressed, the dad works at an insurance firm, and they're all dealing with some very, very relatable and human issues. The main focus of this movie is also that connection, even though it seems less apparent in the third act. But instead of it being more serious, it plays out more like a comedy, which I don't think I'm against. I'm not sure how they would go back to that dark tone or realistic, crushing tone they had in the first movie, considering how they pretty much got over all those problems in that first movie. So I'm fine with it taking more of a comedy route. However, I do think their personal issues are solved too quickly. In the first movie, it seems like their personal issues are resolved throughout the course of the movie as they deal with the central conflict. But in this movie, it seems like the first 2/3 are them taking care of their personal and emotional issues, and then they solve them. And then the third act is really just them solving the central conflict. It also seems like the third act doesn't really have them grow anymore. It seems like it's only there to prove to us, the audience, that they have grown, which we don't need because we've already seen them grow. But this movie makes up for that somewhat because they have a large focus on the action scenes. And although they were present in the first movie, I don't know anyone that goes back to that first movie to see those action scenes. But in this movie, it puts like modern superhero movies to shame. It seems like no one forgets what their superpowers are. They don't resolve to just punching each other. Everyone is paired up with someone that doesn't have the same power as them. Seeing people with separate powers fight each other is way more interesting than seeing good Iron Man fight bad Iron Man, or seeing good Ant-Man fight bad Ant-Man. I also did see Ant-Man and the Wasp recently, and although the antagonist has some very different powers than the protagonist, they don't really handle it very well. It's almost like they don't know what to do, which is why usually they have the hero and the villain have the same powers, because it's really easy to know what to do for a fight scene with that. But in Ant-Man and the Wasp, it seems like there's shrinking, there's phasing, and then they just punch each other whenever they can. So yeah, kudos to this movie for doing things right as far as action goes, and having interesting superhero action in what is pretty much just a kid's movie. I'm not exaggerating when I say the first time I saw this movie was the worst theatrical experience I've had in my entire life. The theater was literally packed. People were on their phones the whole time. They were texting, they were calling. And there were multiple screaming children throughout the movie. Like, actually screaming at the top of their lungs. But during the last action set piece, the entire theater was silent. I know that's usually expected, but for this theater, that's really impressive. Before I dive into spoilers, I just want to say the one thing that I think really brings this movie down is the villain. And if they had a better villain, then maybe this movie would be closer to the quality of the original? So it turns out I had a lot more to say about this movie than I thought I did. So I'm splitting the video into 2 parts. The next part will be all about spoilers. It'll be the spoiler review. You can cover all that good stuff. And like this video just for fun, not because you actually liked it. Leave a comment down in the comments below. It can be unrelated. It could be political discourse. I don't mind. And if you really liked this video, then maybe check in the description to donate to my Patreon, or maybe just check out the Birth the Dinosaur site. And